Hi, welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe the most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way to exit your highly appreciated assets tax deferred so you can grow more wealth. I'm your co host, Pearson York, and each episode I'm joined by some of the best wealth, business, real estate, and leadership individuals in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspirations. So together we make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. We're streaming on Expert Commercial Real Estate Secrets podcast, YouTube channel, Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel, Kingdom Luxury YouTube channel, Kingdom Luxury Facebook channel. So go ahead and subscribe. Rate, review. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us out. So our next guest, you guys are going to love him. He is the founder of Totem Capital Group in Texas. He started this company in 2014, and they are a real estate syndicator, and they have invested in over $50 million of single family and multifamily, and they have over 600 doors. He also has another company that he started called San Antonio Real Property LLC, which is a single family home acquisitions company. He graduated from the University of Incarnate Word with a bachelor's of science in business administration and spent over 12 years in IT leadership roles. He's most recently served as an executive for several software as a service or SaaS companies, where he was able to successfully grow and exit the company. He lives with his wife and children in San Antonio metro area. Please welcome Ruben Dominguez. Ruben, how are you, man?
Good. How are you? I'm good. How are you, Pierce?
I'm doing really, really good. I'm super excited to have you on the show. Thanks for taking your time, and thanks for coming. And I just kind of gave you a brief bio. Hopefully, I did okay over there for you. But why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit more about you and your story?
Sure. So my name Ruben Dominguez. I am from San Antonio. Actually, I'm not from San Antonio. I've been here since about 2003. I'll give you a quick story. I was a corporate guy. I worked for corporate IT for a long time. I was middle management. We ran some support organizations for some large IT companies based out of here in Texas. And the whole time I was looking, I had a very stressful job. The whole time I was looking for a way to get out of the corporate world and have a little bit more time. I had little kids at the time. They were growing up. I was missing a lot of things that they were doing. I'd get home, my wife would tell me all these cool things they did. And I said, wow, I wish I could be there for that. And so I really started looking for a vehicle to, accelerate my retirement, really. And so I found real estate. We started doing single family rentals probably back in 2009. And we did a whole bunch of those. There's something called the Deferred Strategy. I won't go into what that is, but I found that trick on single family, and I started doing it over and over and over again. And in about 2014, I looked back and said, wow, we did a lot of work. I probably worked, it was like working two jobs, getting all these single families done. And we did some flips and some other single family strategies in real estate investing. And I was not that much closer to, my goal of freeing up my time and being able to quit my daytime job. And so I started looking for another way to do that. And it was really multifamily, so commercial real estate. And so a couple years later, we decided to start investing into multifamily commercial real estate. And I invested passively for a long time, which means I just put my money in other people's projects and let them do all the hard work. And then we started going active in about 2017. And we, since then, about 18 months after going active into multifamily investing, I was able to quit my W-2 job. And at that point, we had exited a few companies, and I had made my way to like real upper level management. So my time was very, very limited. And so multifamily is a great way for me to leverage my time because I didn't have to go out and do all the work. But when I got active, it was like, okay, it's time to quit, because being active in multifamily is, it's a full-time job, going out and buying these big buildings.
Yeah.
And so since then, we've acquired we're in about 600 multifamily units. We've got a couple other acquisitions coming down the pipe right now. And we have some pretty lofty goals for 2022 in the multifamily syndication world. And we're excited about what we're going to be able to do this next couple of years.
Well, that's awesome. And, you mentioned something that I've been hearing time and time again, and that is that mainly a lot of with the people who decide to go from single family to multifamily is like they realize that like it's hard to scale, and they don't, even if you do the Burr method, right? Like it's a lot of work, and at the end of it, you're not that much closer, So
yes.
I don't know. You're definitely not the first person to tell me that is, and that's why I moved to multifamily, and so that's interesting that you've also experienced that. I want to take you back a little bit before we kind of get into everything, and you mentioned a few kind of key things here, but what I believe that everyone is given, a set of special gifts, and call them strengths or blessings or spiritual gifts, whatever, and they help them kind of get to that point to achieve or their competitive advantage. So what are your special gifts or spiritual gifts that you've had that have helped you get to where you are?
Gosh, it's the biggest one is I am very good at finding people that do things better than I do. And I'm not really that great at one thing, but I'm really good at finding like, hey, I know where my strengths are really operational, right? I'm a spreadsheet guy. I like to look at spreadsheets and I like to analyze things. I like numbers. And I'm not great at some of the other things, like I'll give you an example. My communications right now with my investors, right? We send out an update every month. We send out a quarterly update. And I have found that my style of communication is very blunt and very dry. And, that's not really something somebody wants to see every month. They want to know the good things. They want to know some of the challenges we've had on some of the properties, but they really I'm not great at it. So I figure I actually found someone that is really good at that. And I say, hey, can you just do this for me? And even in my corporate career, I found that surrounding myself with people that are better than me and finding really great people for our staff is key to our success, right? And I think that's really one of my gifts is I know when somebody's going to be really great at a job, and I can find them and say, hey, I think you're going to be great at this job. It's your skill, it's your strength, and then we bring them on the team, and they end up doing really well. And that was the same in the corporate world. So that led to all of my success so far.
Yeah, so it's the delegating without letting the ego kind of get in the way of, hey, I'm the boss or whatever, right? Like you give people, autonomy, and you trust them. So leadership is what it sounds like is one of your greatest skills, which is, amazing. Good leaders is everything. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So
oh yeah, and it's hard sometimes to let go of I want control over that, and it may not be the way that I would do it, but the way that I do it is probably not as good as the way that they would do it. And even though it's not my way, let them do their thing because they're good at it. And as long as we can get 80% of what I'm looking for, I'm good with that. So we call it like the 80% rule. Get it to 80%, and then we're good. Like ship it.
Yep, definitely. Well, that's good. So it sounds like you've actually studied a lot of leadership, or was this something that's just been innate? It's just been the gift. Have you cultivated this gift at all, or where?
A little bit of both. One thing my corporate career, right? They provide a lot of training, a lot of leadership training. It was already kind of something I just had innate and like a skill, but because of that training, I was able to make it even better. I'm like, okay, well, I got some tips along the way. We took some trainings. I had a lot of teams at my corporate job. I made a lot of mistakes too. It wasn't that I was great all the time. I made a lot of mistakes, and you learn a lot from making those mistakes. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So before the show, we were talking a lot, just kind of about like some tax strategies and where you're at, and how you were wanting people to, kind of get in, and there you were having some issues. So It we know now that you obviously are a phenomenal operator. You know what you're doing. You've got 600 doors. But really, let's dive into this capital gains tax problem and how is it hindering your guys' growth, right? And then you mentioned that you don't actually pay tax on any of your or a very minimal amount. So I'd like to dive into that a little bit. So first of all, what is the biggest frustration with that you're finding with the capital gains tax, and how is it affecting your guys' business?
So it's really not on our buildings that we're buying. It's really we raise money from investors, and we'll bring on additional investors. And a lot of times when we have a live project, we'll get people that contact us and say, hey, I've got, $300,000 and I'm selling some single family and I want that to be tax free. I want to 1031 that into your project, right? And they've already got the 1031 going. And I would love to be able to say, hey, yes, a new investor, come onto our projects, you can 1031. I think the challenge that we have is there's a lot of paperwork that comes. We can do it. It's definitely possible. I know there's some people that do what I do that just say no, never, no 1031s into our deals. We can do it. It's called a tenant in common agreement. And it's just a lot of legal work, right? It's going to add some money to the legal bill. It's going to add some complexity. It's going to maybe some of our other investors might question like, hey, what's this other thing I see on the paperwork? Like, who's this other owner? And so that's the challenge we've had. So right now, unless somebody's coming to the project with $1 million plus, we won't even look at 1031 money into our projects. So that's been one of the challenges we had.
So it's really just the extra complicated legal tax work. And it's just, if it's not $1 million, it's not worth your time.
It's not really worth it. So for $100K, it would be tough for us to go to the attorney, say, hey, we need a tenant in common agreement. And then really, I think more than that is our other investors that don't know what that is. They'll see this tenant. We have to disclose that obviously on our documents. And I don't want them to be confused. And then, we have a philosophy at our company we got to make this as simple and easy to understand for anyone. Because if it gets too complex, a lot of people are like, I don't know if I want to invest in that. And so that's the lifeblood of our company. We want to keep it easy for our investors. And a tenant in common agreement kind of adds that complexity, and they might question it, like, what's this and how does that work? And then we'd have to go back and explain it. So I think it's more of that than the legal fees, although there's some pretty significant legal fees that go with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so it's the complexity that it creates into the deal, and at a certain point, it's just not worth it. But if it's big enough, okay, you'll kind of suck it up because it's a good enough chunk.
Yeah, if we could be, if we can get a big investor in there and it's a win for them, it's a win for us. But if it's just, 100K, 200K, something like that, the legal fees alone might just not be worth it. And then the add to the complexity when, we have a waiting list usually for our projects. We could just say, oh, it's $100,000. I got another guy over here that can put $100,000 and he's on the backup list. So usually we're just saying no to those at this time.
Gotcha. So you're turning away business.
I know you're supposed to tell me the solution to that. I would love to hear a little bit more about that for sure.
Yeah. So what we propose is a strategy called the Deferred Sales Trust, and it's a totally different tax code. It's tax code IRC 453, which is essentially a seller carryback. And the quick version is before you guys close on a deal, then you interject an unrelated third-party trustee. So if let's say you bought a building for $1 million, right? And you're going to turn around and sell for $5 million. Okay. So after, closing costs and all that kind of stuff, depending upon how much you've depreciated, you would pay probably close to like, $1 million, maybe a little bit more in capital gains tax if you just sold it. Right. So that's not great. That's 37 to 40%. That sucks. Yes. Right. We do need people to pay tax, of course, right? So if, there's a big initiative out there right now that needs a lot of tax dollars. So if you want to be a part of that, and sponsor that, that's fine. Like, we don't want to pay that. I don't want to pay that. So
I don't either.
So what we do is instead we interject this unrelated third-party trustee, which is Capital Gains Tax Solutions. That's the role of the company.
Okay.
And they buy the asset for $5 million, and then they turn around and they sell it to the buyer for $5 million. So they've got no gain. So they bought for 5, they sold for 5. So no gain for them. The buyer then funds the trust, however they're going to fund it, whether it's cash or financing or whatever the case may be. And then the trust turns around and they write the seller a note for $5 million. And before, they've structured everything, they set up, hey, like, what's your wealth plan? How much do you want to invest? What's your preferred rate of return? All this kind of stuff. And then they're able to invest it into different asset classes. So you can invest into stocks or bonds or mutual funds or real estate when you want. You can invest it into cryptocurrency. And you're not limited to like kind assets. You're also not limited to the 45 days to identify, 180 days to close, the shotgun wedding, right? Like
Yes.
you don't have to find something immediately, get engaged, and then get married 180 days later. You can time the market. So there's a bunch of benefits. It gives you liquidity, diversification. It gives you cash flow. You can dip into principal when you want. It gives you tax flow. You can control when you want to receive funds, when you don't. So it's like a water spigot. You can turn it off. You can turn it on. But you can go back into real estate when you want. And the cool thing is you get a new depreciation schedule. So those guys that have that $100,000 or whatever just could JV partner with their trust and just invest in your deal. They don't have to go through all that other stuff. So
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
It would open up a lot of different possibilities for your clients who are like, hey, I want to invest in the deal, but we've only got 45 days to figure out how we're going to get this huge legal issue going on with this tenant in common and explain to all of my other people, what's going on. And it's just a better strategy. There's no time constraints. There's no like kind. There's no replacing debt. There's no, there's no depreciation schedule travel. So even if you did a cost seg study in the beginning, right? The first couple of years,
yep,
recaptured a bunch of that depreciation. Like you don't have to worry about that.
Wow.
So it's a phenomenal solution for all of these different types of deals. The other thing too is I'm sure you've run into this, but some of your clients probably have, partnerships or syndications, right? Where they don't necessarily want to move together because they don't like each other anymore or whatever the case may be, right? They're pissed off at their brother or whatever, right? Like happens all the time and they're done with, Timmy and Johnny are done with each other, right? Like
yes.
there's no way to move unless they move together. They got to move as one. With the DST, you don't have to. One person can do a 1031, one person can do a DST. One doesn't have to do anything. They can just pay the tax. So It gives you flexibility into breaking up those syndications. And then you can just kind of sit and park your money and wait for the timing and whatnot. So it gives you a lot of flexibility and control.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be sending you some business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Because we have probably every project we do 2 or 3 that, hey, can I 1031 into your deal? And it's like, oh, no. Maybe if it depends how much you want in 1031. So
we'll have to send out a webinar because I'll say the one caveat with this strategy is that it is a little bit complicated and each individual is unique, and so it requires an education kind of phase,
for sure.
Which people are skeptical. They're like, oh, well, how do I know you're not going to take off and run to Mexico? How do I know it's legal? How do I know it's this? And I'm answering the same questions over and over and over again, right? Everyone has it. It's like it's new to them. When we have a phenomenal track record, over 3,000 closes, 12 random audits from the IRS, no change, no findings on all of them, 2 formal audits from the IRS, no change, no finding, audit by FINRA, no change, no findings. So phenomenal track record, comes with lifetime audit defense. It is just protected because, the guys who created it are proprietary and they wanted to build the track record. They wanted to pave the road without getting arrows stuck in their back. So they kept it very kind of secretive in-house till they built it. And then they proved it. And now we're taking it to the masses.
I love it. I love it. That it's a really great solution for a lot of guys like me. And honestly, we lose a lot of deals that we bid on to 1031 exchange money because they have to overpay because they're motivated buyers, and everyone knows in the real estate game you never want to be a motivated buyer. So it's a great. So if you can please tell all my competitors that we're bidding against these buildings about your solution, that way we don't lose to 1031 exchange money.
We don't lose to 1031. Well, that brings me to another question for you. So you mentioned earlier that you kind of don't really have capital gains tax. So tell me a little bit more about your strategy and how that works.
Sure. So we are doing cost seg studies on all of our buildings. So, and for those that don't know that are listening, most real estate, you'll do a straight line depreciation, which means you take the improvements, not the land, right? So if you buy $100,000 building and let's say you buy it for 120, the land's worth 20, the building's worth 100, you're going to depreciate that $100,000 by 27 and a half years. And that's great, right? It goes against any income you're making for 27 and a half years, but it also means you're not going to get the full benefit unless you have it for 27 and a half years. Most of our projects and syndications are 3 to 5 years. And so what we do is we do what's called a cost segregation study. Instead of taking the improvements over a straight line, 27 and a half years, we say, okay, the flooring is this many square feet. It's worth around this much money. We're going to depreciate. Its usable life is 7 years. I don't know what it actually is, but we hire a company that does all this.
Of course. And
then we take massive losses up front. So in the first probably 2 to 3 years, we take the most depreciation, and that offsets usually any gains that we've had on a sale from another project. And then also we get some carry forward losses that go towards any sale or any potential gains that we could have, any capital gains tax that we could have paid on that. And so that's really for the last, I haven't paid taxes in 3 years.
Yeah.
It's really because I have massive amounts of depreciation from our projects. And then we have a lot of investors that invest with us just because they want some of that depreciation loss on their investment. So, and I'm not a tax professional, obviously. If you're looking at this type of project, go talk to a CPA about it, and then just mention accelerated depreciation with a cost segregation study, and they'll probably know what that is, and they can give you some guidance on it.
Yeah. So you basically do your cost segs, and then you have a 3 to 5 year strategy where you're buying and holding for 3 to 5 years, and then are you flipping and then 1031ing into something else? Is that how you're kind of?
No, we're not 1031ing because what we'd have to do until we found you is everyone in the syndication, every single investor and every single sponsor would have to go from that building to another asset. And then we have the same restrictions, 45 days, 180 days. So we're not 1031 exchange, we're selling. And normally, because we've carried forward so many losses from the first few years, it takes care of any capital gains tax we would have been having to pay. Obviously, not for everyone. There's some investors in our projects that are subject to capital gains tax. But for us, because we are syndicators, that's all we do is we have all these buildings and we're constantly buying and selling. We don't usually have to pay. Now, sometimes, and you'll hear this a lot in the syndication world, you probably have, is we call it the rat race, right? Every time you buy, you have to sell. Every time you sell, you have to buy because the next building is going to offset the gains you'd make on the sale of the building you just sold. So we're on that plan where you're just constantly buying and constantly selling because you have to offset any capital gains.
So if that wasn't a problem for you, would you prefer to keep your real estate, or is it the strategy that you just adopted? Hey, we're going to flip them.
Yeah, our investors really want to get their money back pretty quickly, right? If they put $100,000 in it and I tell them I'm going to keep it for 20 years, they're usually like, oh, I don't know about that. But if we can get it back in 3 to 5 years, they're usually pretty happy. And then our goal is to try to almost double their money. So if we can get it back within 3 to 5 years, they're pretty happy about that. And then they can also put into another building. Another reason why we don't hold them for a long time is the depreciation starts to dwindle off after 5 to 7 years normally. And then also once we go, we're looking for value add properties. So we're going to go find something maybe that's 1980s build, and it's got, half of the 100 units need rehab on them. They've never been touched. And we're going to go in there, we're going to rehab the units, increase the rents. But what we found is if we hold it too long, after 5, 7 years, especially 10 years, the units start to become dated again, and they need another CapEx injection. So at that point, it's like, do we sell it or do we refinance it? And so those are some strategies, but our investors seem to really like to exit and get into something new. And also, you got to see what the market's doing at that point. So,
of course.
Yeah. So that's why we like to do the 3 to 5 year plan.
Gotcha. Okay. And what markets are you currently in?
I am only in Texas markets, San Antonio. And then my business partner, he's in a couple in Austin. I can't find anything that works great in Austin. It's really expensive. And then also down south in McAllen, the where SpaceX is at, basically down in Texas. Yeah. So, but really all in Texas. And San Antonio I like because I've been here for a long time. I've invested here. If you tell me rents on this street are $900, I can say, I don't know about that. And so I can also drive to a property, any property we own, within 20 minutes, and I can go out there and talk to the management group, pop in and say hi if I need to take care of anything. I don't really do any active management. We hire professional third-party property management, but it's nice to get out there and check on them and know them, and you want them to know that you're involved in the ownership. You're not just a hands-off guy, right? So yeah. That's why we like investing with, and we're still able to find projects that work for us here. So until we can't, we're not going to really be looking too hard outside of the market.
So what are your like? You said you had some pretty lofty goals. So do you mind sharing what some of those goals might be?
Yes. So we're trying to double our ownership next year. So we're looking at another 600 units, which is probably, we have to raise about $20 to $25 million of equity next year in order to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's probably $60 to $70 million worth of assets that we need to go out and purchase. So, but we always have, obviously, we will never buy if the numbers aren't penciling out for us, because you can force a deal and you can bet on things like appreciation, especially in Texas, and it'll probably happen, but we just don't feel comfortable being good stewards of our investor money, going out there and buying things on crazy pro forma numbers. So now if we can find them, though, we'll buy them. And that's a 600 unit goal. And we're spending a lot of time analyzing deals. We'll probably analyze 50 deals before we find one that makes sense. And then sometimes that doesn't work because we're coming in too low and they want way too much for it. But we have a real great relationship with brokers here in San Antonio. And so they know that we can close the project, and that's how we've won probably our last 3 or 4 is, hey, if you can close at the price that you bid on 3 months ago, the deal is yours, because the seller's in a bind of whatever it is. And a lot of times people are in a bind. They got to sell quick. They're letting debt maturity come up on them, and they're going to owe the whole balance of the bank, or the property's in not a great condition and they don't have money to keep it fixed up. And so they're starting to lose renters because of that. And so we win a lot of those projects, which is great for us. Bad for the sellers, but great for us.
Yeah. Are you guys financing a lot of these deals, or are you doing all cash, or how do you purchase them?
We are always using bank leverage just because of the returns that we're giving to our investors. If we didn't use bank leverage, we wouldn't be able to deliver those returns. But there's a balance. You don't want to take too much leverage. Right. And you don't want to, because then if something happens, you can't afford your debt service. That's not a good spot to be in. And you want to take enough, because every dollar we raise from an investor means 15 to 20% return on that dollar every year, and so it's kind of expensive. Yeah. So there's a balance, and it just depends on the project. Normally, we're going to be between 75 to 78% leverage on a property, and the rest we raise capital, and we're putting a lot of our own money into the projects as well. So
awesome. Okay. So we're kind of getting to the end of our time here. I'm going to go ahead and you ready for the lightning round?
I'm ready.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
It changes. Right now, it's Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. I don't know if you've read that book. Yeah, I really like that book, especially for what we're doing, right? We're trying to get this, especially for you, this high level concept of, investing money and capital gains and all this stuff to investors. And they're coming from are we sure this guy isn't trying to take our money, right? They're coming from that position. So that book kind of teaches you how to get past that.
Yep.
And it's a great book for anyone in any business, not just
Phenomenal.
in a business where you're raising money.
Oren Clapson, he's an interesting guy because he's always doing just like big deals. He just loves those big deals, man. And I picked up a lot of stuff. He has another one called Flip the Script.
I haven't read that one. I'm gonna have to read that.
That one's good too. You'll like it, I promise.
I'll check it out.
Okay, favorite leadership quote.
Oh my gosh. It's gonna not be by somebody you know, but it's an old mentor of mine in the corporate world. And he basically said, to motivate teams, you want them to be on an inspiring mission, and you want them to he basically said, hey, have an inspiring mission. And so we really hone in on that. Like if we want people to follow and we want our investors to be happy and we want our employees to be happy, there's got to be some type of inspiring mission. Inspiring mission is not go out and make a bunch of money, right? That's not very inspiring. That might motivate you for a little while, but for the long term and when things get tough, that's hard. So I like to say, keep on that inspiring mission and make sure that everyone knows what that is and it's real clear.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I mean, I think that goes back to a lot of people where they're just like, the why behind what you're doing. If you don't have that strong why, you're gonna falter. Like there's just no way around it because it's a grind. It's eventually, if you're not like, if you're not propped up by something bigger than yourself, you're absolutely right. Money's not gonna motivate you. So I really like that. What's one thing you would tell your 20-year-old self if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice?
I would say start real estate early, because when I was that young, I thought, oh man, I don't want to be a landlord. I thought about it. It was something that came across my plate, but I was like, I don't want to be a landlord, like toilets and phone calls at night. But if you do it right, and I had listened to people that had done it wrong, right? People that, like, my parents had some rentals and it was a nightmare for them, and they were doing it wrong, right? I listened to people that were doing it wrong, and I always say, like, be careful who you take advice from. If they've never done it or they failed in it, why would you take advice from that? Like, I wouldn't go to someone that failed medical school and be like, hey, tell me what's wrong with me. I'm not going to go to a doctor. I want you to tell me. Like, that's just, but we do that a lot in life is we'll ask our parents, right? And nothing against my parents, like they're great, but nothing against anyone's parents. But if they're not where you want to be financially, don't ask them for financial advice, right? Go to someone that's done what you want to do and ask them advice. So I would probably tell myself, hey, start earlier and go talk to somebody that's done it successfully.
Awesome. All right. Last question. What are you most curious about right now?
Oh man, so it changes a lot. I'm kind of like the shiny object guy. I really have to be careful. I was reading a lot about, and have you ever heard of NFT?
Yeah, I was just going to say, are you going to bring up the metaverse here?
Yes, I was reading about that today, and it was like, I got into it way too long this morning. It's like, I shouldn't have not gotten to this, but it was pretty cool about reading about that. And so today I'm interested in that. Doesn't mean I'm going to be into that tomorrow, but like I said, I'm the shiny object guy. I got to really be careful, like not to go after something because it's going to take me away from what I'm supposed to be doing. And so
the NFT metaverse cryptocurrency world is a full nother 5-year-long podcast that we could just dive into because there's so much there, and where the world's going with real estate and digital real estate and NFTs and how that all, and linking NFTs to real physical property and ripping rights away from property. Like there's some crazy cool stuff coming down the pipe with NFTs and the metaverse and all that. It's going to change everything. So yeah, I mean, it might be shiny right now, but I feel like that's going to stay shiny for a long, long time.
I think so. Yeah. And it's interesting. It's very interesting to read about for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, guys. Well, that's all the time that we have today. So thanks again for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe the most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy. and using a proven tax deferral strategy is the best way to grow your wealth. Please rate, review, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Ruben, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate everything that you've brought to us, a ton of value, and we're excited for you and your goals, and we'd love to partner up and be able to help you with that. So, guys, rate, review, subscribe, and we'll see you later. See ya.